I do want to tell you that it has been a real treat for Mandy and Hayden and I to be back on campus. It's been a long time since we've graduated. I probably look like it's been a long time. And I will tell you, it has been refreshing to just see some of the old stomping grounds. And it has also been refreshing to see a lot of the changes that are happening here. And one of the things that has stayed the same, though, and that I would never want to change, is the culture of Clark Summit University. And I hope that you realize that when you guys walk past each other on the sidewalk and you say hello, like, people notice. I noticed. And it was just really good to be a part of a culture that is caring. So I mentioned yesterday that Mandy and I are with a ministry called Capital Ministries. My boss founded the ministry in 1996. My boss is 7'2", played basketball at UCLA under John Wooden. He founded the ministry in California, which is where he lived, and it still lives, but weekly he goes to Washington, D.C., and in the previous administration, presidential administration, he had a White House Bible study. He had a weekly Bible study with the president's cabinet. Still today, he has a Bible study with the Senate and the House of Representatives. Out of that, we have founded ministries in 43 state capitals around the United States. Mandy and I have the opportunity to be the ministry leader there in Columbus, Ohio, and then I also oversee all of our international ministries. So in our organizational chart, my title is Director of International Ministries for Capital Ministries, and that just simply means that I oversee all of our ministries outside of North America. Right now we have 43 ministries in 43 federal capitals around the world. And so what that typically means is that my travel plate is fairly full. Last year, we were in Ohio. But we'll see as things start to loosen up here. So we canceled 6 trips last year, and we've divided the world up into 6 different locations. We have global leaders in each of those locations, but and they all report to me. But so it's really fun. I might throw some stories in here after a little bit to maybe give you a better idea of what I do. But what does it look like? What does a ministry look like for Capital Ministries? So we do this. This is our motto. We are making disciples of Jesus Christ in the political arena around the world. Let's land on a couple points there. Disciples. We are making disciples. There are a lot of ministries, and I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just telling you there are actually on the political campuses, on the capital campuses around the United States, there are actually a fair number of ministries, especially if you go to Washington, D.C. There's all kinds of ministries around the Capitol grounds of Washington, D.C. And the same is true around the state houses around the United States, depending on which state you're in. But even in Columbus, Ohio, there's a number of ministries that are on those campuses. But they typically fall into 2 categories. One is what we call they are Christian lobbyists. To God be the glory. We need them. This type of individual, what they do is they'll meet with the legislator and they'll talk about a bill that is coming down and why they either should promote it or get rid of it, stand against it. And so we have what is called Christian lobbyist type of ministries. To God be the glory for them. That's just not who we are. We're disciple makers. The other type of ministry that is prevalent, and again, we say to God be the glory. We're not against this at all. Are prayer ministries, and they have tons of prayer warriors, either in the state or around the nation or around the world. And they are praying for their legislators. They're praying for the president, for legislators, for what's going on in their families, for the bills that are coming down. and all that kind of stuff. That's wonderful. To God be the glory for those people. Just not who we are. We are disciple makers. We are going after the person's heart, a legislator's heart. And we believe that if God has their heart, we have a good inclination of how they also might vote, especially on moral issues. So that's kind of what we do. So what does it look like? So I have two Bible studies at the State House every week. One is Monday at lunchtime, and legislative aids. Hey, is there anybody here? Are you taking a government class of any? There is a government class, right? Government and what's it titled? Give me. You're sitting in the class. Somebody tell me. Wow, that's intriguing. I know. So it is different in what we do in that I meet on Mondays at lunch with all the legislative aides. It's kind of like a college ministry because they're all basically right out of college, and it's a burnout job. It's kind of like if you go into sales right away. It's a lot of companies just it's those entry-level positions, right? But they're legislative aides, and that they are going 100 miles an hour all day long, 7 days a week. Whatever the legislator wants, that's what they're doing. When they come to our Bible study, it's like that's their time where they can catch a breath. They can mingle with other believers or other people who are searching. But on Mondays we do that. It's with all legislative aides and all the Capitol staff who want to come. So if they're a tour guide, if they're security, if they're the sergeant at arms, they are welcome to come, and we have a blast. We just have a ball on Mondays at noon. When we meet with the legislators is every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. Mandy and I, we leave the house at 6 o'clock. We have about an hour drive over to Columbus. We park under the State House. We go up and in the State House in Ohio, all the senators, their offices are in the State House. If you're a representative, it's across the street in one of the high rises on floors 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Okay, and so we meet on the 13th floor of the high rise there in this huge conference room with this huge table, and we have anywhere between probably 15 and 25 that will come at any time, which is a really good number. But we do that every week, and then what I do is, and I didn't do this for years, but I just started because my boss encouraged me to, and it really has made a huge difference. He said, Brian, what I do in Washington, D.C. is I print out my Bible studies, and we put them on really nice paper, the nicest paper that you can get, so that it like pops, it just shines. And we do really nice color, put nice pictures and stuff on it. We have a great template that it fits into. And so we do that with the Bible study, and then after we're done with the Bible study, we're not allowed by law to go to the House of Representatives office without a legislator taking us office to office. But what we do is we go across the street then to the Capitol, because in the Capitol, it's not against the law. They welcome you. The senators welcome you. So we go into every single office of every single senator, and we tell their legislative aide, hey, I know you've been waiting all week to get this Bible study. And what it has done, it has opened all kinds of doors and avenues for conversations. Now, sometimes people, they all know we're coming. Oh, it's Wednesday, you're coming. Yeah, we've been looking for you. Or, we knew you would be here. Either way. So, but we go in and we say, we knew you've been waiting for this. And so, what God has done, just with those simple printed Bible studies, he's opened all kinds of doors of discussion and opportunity. So sometimes we'll be sitting in there and we'll say to the legislative aides, hey, here's the Bible study for the week. Take a quick peek at it before you pass it on to your boss. And the senator will say, hey, is that the Reverend? Send him back. And that actually happens quite often. And so then we get to go back, and they might want to talk about a bill or something, like just to get our opinion of it, but that's not the purpose that we're showing up. They might say, hey, I've got something going on in my own life. Would you please pray for this or that? But it opens all kinds. Before Mandy started traveling with me, we had one of our senators in Ohio. He's a former Marine. No. He was a Navy SEAL. Wasn't he? I think he was a Navy SEAL. bad dude. Like, he knows it, right? Like, what you know the type of person where, you know, you shake their hand and they want you to know that you've shaken somebody's hand. That's this person, right? And he was just, man, I'd go in his office and I'd say, hey, here's a Bible study, and, oh, let me see this. And he would challenge me. He would just read a sentence. What does this mean? Well, I have to be on my game, have to go at it. Well, now that Mandy's with me and she's pretty and he wants to have favor with Mandy, so he's like, oh, hey, you're back. Oh, let me see that Bible. Hey, come on back here. Let's have a discussion, you know. But we do, and it's just it's really amazing the types of conversations that we have. And by the way, if you're a legislator, it's like a small club. Every person there is a winner. There's no losers. They've won that seat. And they trust hardly anybody. And I had a guy tell me, I don't even trust my own wife to tell her, you know, because she'll go to the news or it'll get out somehow. So he said, I had a legislator tell me this not too long ago. He's like, there's two people in the world that I trust. He's like, one is me when I'm working out at 4:30 in the morning, and the other is you when you come into my office. I know it stays there. And so it's this club that if they let you in, it's a big deal. And so anyway, that's what we do. You know, one of the things that I learned that I did want to tell you about is that when I was a junior, between my junior and senior year of high school, I went to a camp, and the speaker, he was an old guy. When the first night that he got up to speak, his name was Carl Hawarda out of Michigan. And he was an old guy, and he walked with a limp, and his shoe, he had one shoe, you know, that was like 3 inches thicker than the other, and I was an athlete, and I was like, what, have I a whole week of this? Well, God used that man in my life as much as any other person has ever meant to my life. And at the end of that week, instead of giving a salvation type of invitation, he gave an invitation for those who felt like they were called into full-time ministry. I had such a pressing on my heart, and that I couldn't stop myself. I came forward, and then when he was done praying, I looked around, and there was all kinds of other people that had come forward. A lot of them came to Clark Summit University as well to be trained. I knew that I wanted to be a youth pastor. We had 23 years of mostly wonderful years working with teens. If you're in ministry, it's difficult, okay? There's hardships that come along, but there's also mountaintops. We wouldn't trade it for the world, but when we felt like God was opening these other avenues for us, number one in the political avenue, but then also I told you yesterday I worked with some sports teams as well. And that's what I started to eat, sleep, drink, and I went to Mandy and I was like, what's God doing here? You know, is he moving us? And if he's going to move us into another type of ministry, how do we do that? You know, and I never considered myself to be a missionary type. You know why? What's everybody's hesitation about missions? You got to raise support. Well, I mean, that's a scary thing. And who wants to support Brian Hanson, you know? Who is he? Well, we took a leap of faith. We did it. We actually went under the umbrella of, I've heard it here, ABWE. And we went and we got trained and we went out under them. And one of the things that I learned, and I wish that I had really known this, I knew it in here, but I didn't really process it. There were people in our class, and at that time, they said that we were the largest class going through their training that they had. So I don't know what was there, Manny, maybe 50 people there or something like that. People were going out all over the world. But not many of them were going out as church planters, like I had thought. They were going out and they were using every type of talent that God had given them, whether it was in the business world, whether it was in the political realm, they were going to use their entrepreneurial skills to get into countries that were hard to get into. And I was amazed. Number one, I was amazed at the quality of people that were giving up their really good jobs because God had so impressed them. And I was thinking to myself, I wish I had known this sooner. And then excuse me, we made the jump. We resigned from our church. We were youth pastors. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We had 4 kids. We had my mother-in-law that was living in an apartment on our house. She had been with us for a number of years. When I resigned from the church, which, by the way, took more faith than what I knew that I had, I woke up the next morning and I thought this. By the way, I'm not going to preach today. Is that okay? I just kind of want to have a family discussion with you. Is that all right? I woke up the next morning and I thought this. I am the biggest fool that has ever walked the face of the earth. I was giving up a bi-weekly paycheck, and for youth pastor ministry, we were in a significant sized church. We had a significant income as far as youth pastor salary goes, and we were walking away from it all. Just so happens, I like to have a roof over my head. I like to eat. I literally thought we were going to have to farm our kids out. We had no other income. We had like a few $100 in the bank. And God took me to this place where I've always been a glass half full type of guy, but he took me to this place where my glass wasn't empty, but I wasn't sure that it had anything in it. Does that make sense? I had never been there before. I felt like mentally and emotionally I was on the verge of shattering. I'd never been there. Some of you have, but I hadn't. And I just want to tell you that our paycheck, here's the end of the story. We were coming up on the last, if it wasn't the last week of our paycheck, it was pretty close. I forget the exact timing, but we were coming up close to our last paycheck from the church. And my pastor told me, he was going on sabbatical. He's like, Brian, just share with the church what you're doing. I said, okay. I'm an emotional person anyway, and our youngest daughter was getting baptized that day, and I baptized her, and I was, it's emotional for a dad. And I remember coming out, and I'm sitting on the first row of the church, and we have like 1,200 people, and we have a balcony and all that kind of stuff, and all eyes, so our worship director, he's doing this wonderful song. Well, it's coming down to the last line of the last song, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there, I got nothing. I'm like, I am spent on every level. I have nothing left in the tank. And then the cue is for me to go up on stage is that the worship director, he kind of gives you one of these. As he's done singing, but he's still playing, he gives you, it's go time, right? It's time for you to step up. So he's like this. And literally, I remember thinking to myself, God, I can't do this. The next thing I remember is that I'm walking down the stage. God honest truth. And I sit down in the front row. Somebody else comes up. They say a couple things. Close in prayer. When we open my eyes in prayer, from me down the aisle to go out the sanctuary, there was a line of people. And they were waiting to come up to me and say, Brian, we got your back. And God took a husband and wife that had nothing, and he put so much money into we're like, man, we're rich. Well, we weren't, but he gave us enough so that we could survive on that while we were raising our funds. And I'm like, listen, gang, if God calls you to something, it's his responsibility to take care of it. I felt I was jumping off a high dive, and I didn't realize that there was no water in the bottom of the pool. And just before I hit, God put this net in there, and he caught us. It was the coolest thing. Stretched our faith more than we ever knew it could. And I just want to tell you that I don't know why you're here. I don't know what you're studying. I don't know what you think you might be doing in the future. But I want to tell you this, just as far as missions goes, this isn't a missions conference. I'm just telling you the story of my life, okay? Missions is the coolest thing, and God, no matter what you're studying, God can use it. around the world, and some of the things that you're studying is the open door ticket that nobody else can get into. What I want to impress upon you is something that has really been rumbling around in my mind for a little while now, but it's something that I've been noticing over the course of the years of ministry. But God is, first of all, I want you to know this. I never went after anything, any position that God has given me. I sent my resume out one time in my life. 2 times. God has just opened the doors for us, and I tell people I'm just dumb enough to walk through to see what's on the other side. But what I have noticed is this. There is this thing that I've been calling it, I don't think it's original with me, but I've been calling it the ministry of presence. The ministry of presence. And I'm thinking about writing something about this and maybe just some of my experiences, but I think the foundation of it goes to Matthew chapter 5. If you want to turn there, you're welcome to. Matthew chapter 5 is interesting. And I love this. By the way, I saw on the screen earlier that there's going to be a trip to the Holy Land. One of the best things that I've ever done. You go there and the Bible jumps to life as you read it. This is one of those passages that actually jump to life because you can see where it's playing out. This is on the northern side of the Sea of Galilee. In fact, I think it's still there. This is where the Beatitudes, the Mount of Beatitudes took place. And today it's a big banana tree grove. But you can look down from the top of the hill and over the bananas, and there's the Sea of Galilee right there. And this is where this took place. Well, after Jesus kind of goes through this, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. He goes through all that, and then he says this to his disciples. He says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? This is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." Well, that's always been a conundrum to me. Well, salt. I heard recently a pastor, he was preaching on this, and he said, well, my family and I, we're really not into salt, so let's look at light. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, do you not know what salt does? Does anybody know what salt does? It's family time. What's salt for? Yeah. It brings out the flavor of what you're going to eat, right? This is what it does. Or it's a preservative. And so before refrigerators and things like that, how did they preserve meat? They packed them in salt. That was a preservative. But it's something that gives out flavor. And this is what he is saying. He says, you are the salt of the earth. He says here, though, you are the salt of the earth. He doesn't say, hey, be more salty so that you can be better witnesses in the earth. This is an interesting thing. Can you make salt more salty? The answer is no. When it's lost its saltiness, he says it here, it's useless. He's like, throw it out, you can walk on it. Just get rid of it. He doesn't say be salty. What does he say? He says you are. This is who you are. You are the salt of the earth. He doesn't say be the salt that I want you to be. He's like, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, this is who you are. This is a part of it. This is what comes out of you as you live your life. It's like I am who I am, but with God, it's like this flavor explosion. It's like I'm more attractive than what I was before without Christ. And he's saying that here. So he's like, you are. This is what you are. Don't become it. You're already it. You are the salt of the earth. He says in verse 14, he says, you are the light of the world. You're like a city on a hill that cannot be hidden. This ministry of presence, hey, listen. Sometimes just showing up is enough. Sometimes. He's like, I don't know about that. Okay, let me give you a couple examples. When we are walking the hallways of the Capitol, the marble hallways of the Capitol, we have people that will see us coming, and they'll be like, Pastor Brian, hey, Mandy, hey. And they make a beeline over to us. Man, it's great to see you today. We'll have people tell us, you have no idea how good and how encouraging it is to see you here. Man, you breathe life into us. Okay, that's cool. I love those. But sometimes the darkness doesn't like the light. We can be walking the same hallways, the same marble floors, and people will see us and they can't find a door to sneak into fast enough so that they don't have to have an encounter with us. Cool, that's fine. It's not about me. It's who we are. It's who we represent. This ministry of presence, if some of you are studying to be a pastor, one of the highlights of my ministry, not everybody has this, I think it's built into the heart, but if you want to be what's called pastoral, this means also that you have a heart that cares for people. And if you have the opportunity to go into a hospital room at some point, people see you come into the hospital room, just your presence is enough. They're like, Pastor, I've been waiting for you to get here. And then, if you want to power boost it, don't leave without reading scripture and praying. That speaks to the soul. Everybody laying in a hospital bed wants to hear the life-giving words of God. It speaks to the soul. A few years ago, I told you I went to Kenya. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do, from the time I was a kid, I'd always wanted to go to Africa and go into jungles and stuff. I thought that would just be a cool thing to do. Well, a few years ago now, I had the opportunity. And we went there for one thing, but I said, well, after we're done with that, I said, I want to go out into the bush. Can we do that? And the guys, oh, yeah, we can do that. I had no idea what I was asking. And so we landed in Nairobi, taught at this university, and then we did what I was waiting for all my life. I got to go into the bush. And we drove 8 hours one day, and we ran, it's one of those things where you're on paved road, and the further away you got from Nairobi, the worse the roads got. And then pretty soon there was no paved roads, and it was just stone. And then after a while, you're on sand. And so this one day, we had traveled 8 hours one day. We spent the night somewhere, and I don't have time to tell you the whole story, but we had a breakdown. We had a flat tire. We weren't able to get in the middle of the desert. In the middle of the desert, we came upon this patch of road, and I call it a road, but all it is a path between trees that you go on. And we were in this old Toyota van, and we came on this like 40-yard stretch of water that was in this path, and the driver's like, "Oh, we're not going through." I'm like, "Well, but we have to get to the village." He's like, "No, we're not going through." So we go back just a couple miles. We end up spend the night. We wake up the next morning. We have a flat tire in the van. Not a problem. We have a spare. Throw on the spare, and we sent the tire. I don't know. Somebody picked it up on a motorcycle and took it somewhere. So the next morning we get up. This is the desert, right? So we get up. We go back. You would think that the water would be gone. Nope, still there. So we had this little pygmy guy. He gets out with this machete, and I'm like, great, we're going to be here all day long trying to get around, because all it is it's trees with thorns like this. And he gets out with this machete, and I mean, it's it was literally like watching a cartoon with chips flying everywhere. He's like, and pretty soon he had a path cleared around this puddle. So we make it to this village, and it's imagine the middle of Africa, the huts and everything. Imagine that in your mind. That's where we were. And we're pulling in, and they had it lined with the most beautiful cactus with these yellow flowers on them. And we're pulling in. As we're pulling into the village, this wasn't the village we wanted to get to. We wanted to get to the next village, which was about 7 more miles, who, as far as we knew, had never heard the gospel. And as we're pulling in the village, we hear this. We have another flat tire. We're in the middle of Africa. We're in the bush, literally the bush. But we are in this village, so we had 2 things with us. Little snack things of Doritos, very important, and little bottles of water. So we go under this shaded area, and our interpreter who is with us is there. And we're talking. I'm eating my Doritos, and all of a sudden there's this little man that comes in through the front. And he has this bulge in his stomach, and the guy next to me says, "Oh no." I was like, "What?" He's like, "This is so and so." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Stay here." So he goes and he talks to him. And then he looks at me and he's like, "Would you talk to him?" I said, "Sure, I'd talk to him." If I had known who this man was, I might not have been so agreeable. So I go up, and we're sitting on these benches and everything, and this guy, he asked who we are, where we're from, what we're doing there. And I told him, we came to tell people about God and about his son, Jesus. And he says, "Oh, no. He says, I have my God. He lives right up there. And there's this mountain. It's called Mount Co, as I understand. But it's this mountain." He's like, "Yeah, my God lives right up there." I said, "Oh, no. I'm not talking about that God. I'm talking about the God who made that mountain and who made the stars and who made the heavens." And he says, "Oh." He said, and I would like to go back and meet this guy and ask what he meant by this, but he says, "I was shown that someone would come and tell me about this God, and I'm seeing him face to face." So I tell him about Jesus, his son, and I said, as I end most of the things, I said, "Would you like to ask Jesus into your life to forgive you of your sins?" And you got to imagine this. The interpreter is standing right behind him. I'm sitting here. There's this man here, and the interpreter standing right behind him. And so this is, to my question, this is this man's response. He says, "Yes, I think I would like to try him out." And I said, "No." And the interpreter was quiet. And he was like, I said, "Tell him no." He's like, I said, "Tell him that my God is not a God that you try out. My God is a God that demands your life in return. Tell him that." He's like, I said, "Tell him what I said." And so he tells him. This gentleman's response was, "Oh, this is the God that I've been waiting for." There's more to the story, but this man prays to receive Christ. When he's done, I jump up. It was a 3-way interpretation thing going here. I was saying it in English. This man was interpreting it into another language so that it could be interpreted into his native tongue so that he could say it in his native language. When we were done, I stood up and I shook his hand, and he hugged me. Remember I said that there was something, I thought he had a tumor in his stomach? It was an AK-47. And he hugged me, and he just thought, so come to find out, he's a warlord. He, the army, the police wouldn't touch him. The army came after him. He had been in prison, but anyway, he roams the inland of Kenya there. And but I'll tell you what, he gave his life to Christ. I couldn't get him away from me. He was on my elbow everywhere I went. They went and they killed a goat. That was an experience. And especially when you get to eat the innards first, because they are the best part of the goat. And but you know what? You do it and you eat it, and you know what? You know what I did? I didn't go to Kenya thinking to myself, man, would it be possible, God, that I could meet a warlord that might take my life, and that I could just share? You know what? I just wanted to go because I always wanted to. But it's this thing. It's called the ministry of presence. It's an amazing thing when we show up and we're faithful, just what God will do. If I could just encourage you, family of God, live your life with this. Live your life with authenticity as a part of the family of God, and be faithful, and watch what God will do. You will have the ride of your life. It'll be awesome. Lord, it is an awesome experience that we can have just as a family time here, just to shoot the breeze, but about you and your goodness and your faithfulness, about people taking huge leaps of faith, but you are always there to do what you say that you will do. Lord, for this group of men and women who are right now preparing for what life has for them in the next stage of their life, God, I ask that you would wrap your arms around them, that you would make your path to be their path for their lives. I ask that you would use them to do things that are significant for your kingdom, not for our glory. And God, I ask this simple prayer. Would you allow us to show up where you want us to show up, and to say what you want us to say, and the rest we leave to you. In Jesus' name, amen.